the Sacramento Kings, one of the best stories in the NBA. I'm super hyped about this team, man. I cannot wait for playoff games in Sacramento.
I have a question for you about the Kings. Is this a team that can make and potentially win the finals?
Make and win the finals. It's interesting. Let me start by saying this. Jason knows how I feel about this. I want to look in the camera. I want to be very honest. We spoke earlier this season about accountability, and I just want to be accountable for some things that I said at the trade deadline last year. Now, in the context of the trade deadline, I didn't like the trade. I should not have used the word malpractice, and I apologize for that. I apologize for that to the Sacramento Kings fan base, and I apologize for that to Monty McNair. This trade has turned into a win-win. Now, the team struggled last year. I think they were 5-9 or 5-10 with Sabonis once after post-trade. What they did this offseason, they bring in Mike Brown. They add a ton of shooting. Kevin Huerter. They add Malik Monk. They draft Keegan Murray. They put the ball exclusively in De'Aaron Fox's hands. They use Sabonis as a hub. This offense, number one offense in the league, historical offense. It is so fun to watch. And so much of that has been the offseason. But I was wrong. And I'll acknowledge that. I love watching this team play. I love watching this team play. Mention the shooting. This has been a big thing. So Murray is at about 41%. Huerter is at about 40%. Both those guys on fairly high volume. Malik Monk hasn't shot great this season, but he's up to 35%. Harrison Barnes has been solid, just under 37%. And then even, I was looking at I want to get in their lineup data. Even their bench guys, Trey Lyles, Terrence Davis, right around 37%. They're 37% overall as a team. They take 36 threes a game, which is, not in the top 5, but they take a lot of threes. This is a modern offense. And when you have a guy as dynamic off with the basketball as De'Aaron Fox and you have spacing, this is what you get. Like, this is a really, really good basketball team. To answer your questions about whether or not they can win the finals, I'm not willing to go there yet. Partially, it's the defense for me. Number 25 defensively. They remind me in some ways of the Nuggets, if that makes sense, just because the Nuggets have historically had these amazing offenses over the last 3-4 seasons, but they've been in the bottom third defensively. I don't know, outside of, I think, LeBron James's team that made the finals in 2018, I don't know that you can have a bottom 5-ish defense and get all the way to the finals. I don't know. Do you think they're contenders?
I agree with you about the defense. I wanted to put your historic quote in context a little bit, because, we've talked about this a little bit, but for people who haven't followed this, they're 20-8 over the last 2 months, offensive rating of 124.4. Last 10 games, offensive rating is 125.1. The best offensive rating in history before this was 118.3, which was the 2020 Nets. So they're kind of shattering what we sort of expected from what you think offenses could do. I think that they can compete I think that it's wide open. I think that we've talked about this before with this, with the way the league is set up. I wouldn't be shocked. The one other thing I wanted to ask you about, because I do feel like one of the knocks on them in the playoffs that is, probably unfounded, but I'm curious your take on this, is that this offense is going to slow down with playoff basketball. But according to Synergy, right now they have the best half-court offense in the NBA.
Right.
And so do you think that there is going to be, obviously with how their defense has played all year, like if the offense slows down at all, they're going to have some trouble. But is there any reason to think that this juggernaut that they've built is going to change at all when you get to sort of the difference in playoff basketball versus regular season basketball?
So the idea of the game slowing down in the playoffs, like I think that's primarily true. I think that's based in reality. The one thing I'll say is there's a difference between playing up and down and then creating pace in the half court. I'll give you an example. So the Cleveland Cavaliers have been 29th or 30th in pace all season. But if you watch them play, they get out and run. They get defensive stops and they go play in transition. They get steals. They go play in transition. And you're like, how are they 30th in pace? The reason is they have the slowest half court sets. they have more possessions that end with 6 seconds or under on the shot clock than any other team. So for the Kings, I don't think it's about slowing the game down and not playing in transition. It's continuing to play at that pace. This is where, to me, Boston gets in trouble, where you get down to the last few minutes, and I witnessed it last weekend against the Nets and the Knicks, and it sort of just becomes about matchup hunting, and then you get tough shots in the last 5-6 seconds of a shot clock. If you just play your half-court sets, and so much of what Sacramento does, think about what Sacramento does in the half court. It's a lot of De'Aaron Fox creating off the dribble. So that's pace, right? That's pace. It's a lot of Sabonis dribble handoffs. That's movement. That's pace. So those things, to me, they carry over into the playoffs. I would expect their offense to be fine. I want to touch on the lineup data in a second, but let's actually talk through this a little bit in terms of them in the playoffs. So they're currently tied for second with Memphis at 40-26. I think it's likely, again, I don't really know what's going on with Memphis, but it's likely that Sacramento ends up in that 2-3 spot. Now, they could play Golden State in the first round. They could play Clippers, Minnesota, Dallas, Utah. I mean, there's a bunch of teams. So outside of those matchups, I don't want to get into that because it's sort of so up in the air. It's that second round to me. It's that second round to me where, all right, if you're the second seed and you have home court advantage and you're playing the Memphis Grizzlies in the second round, and again, maybe Memphis doesn't get past Golden State. Maybe Memphis doesn't get past the Clippers. I think if it's Memphis, I like that matchup. Memphis is a team that really struggles in the half court, Sacramento's good in the half court. I like that matchup, especially if you have a home court advantage. Let's say Phoenix moves up into that 3 seed. You win the first round. Now you've got Phoenix in the second round. I'm bullish on Phoenix, even though we've only seen 3 games of this Kevin Durant, CP, Ayton, Booker pairing. I'm bullish on that. Then you get past that, and to me, now it's a little sneaky. That second round to me is where, depending on how these seedings play out, that to me is the tough round. Because look, I think you could make an argument here that them in the finals against, let's say it's Phoenix at 4-1. Okay, now that's I'm still going with Phoenix, but let's say it's Denver. Let's say it's the Clippers. Like I think there's a way for them to get to the finals. I'm not discounting it, but to me, it's that second round matchup where if it's Memphis, given their struggles at times recently, given Steven Adams, his health still being up in the air, Brandon Clark being out for the season, there's a good chance they end up in the Western Conference Finals if they stay in that 2 spot and Memphis stays in that 3 spot.
Is there a type of team? We mentioned the defensive struggles. Is there a type of team? Is it like a Denver, like another offensive juggernaut that they most want to avoid? Is there a type of team that you feel like they match up best with?
It'd be interesting if Denver and Sac played in a playoff series, just because of the offenses, and neither defense is particularly well. Denver has been awful the past 3 or 4 games defensively, but for the last 2-3 months, they've been good. They've been around the top 10 overall in the NBA. Here's one thing I want to note. Okay. We brought up their lineup data early in the season, and it was interesting at the time. At the time, we brought up the fact that the 5-man starting lineup had a great net rating and a great defensive rating. So this idea, Sabonis can't be an anchor to a defense, like we kind of were like, all right, well, the early data shows that team has been really good defensively. That's not the case now. So their 5-man starting lineup has only a 1.9 net rating, 118.3, which is roughly what they score offensively, 116.4 defensively. Their next 4 most used lineups all have positive ratings: 5.8, 18.7, 13.2, 18.4. To provide a little context, this is what I found interesting looking through this 5-man data. Their 5-man lineup, their starters, they've played 52 games together. 757 minutes together. Number one in the NBA in both. The next closest team to have 5-man units play games together, Chicago has a 5-man unit. It's not their starters, with 45 games played together. Atlanta has 2 with 38. Sac has another one with 38. And then you get to Philly has played their 5-man unit with Melton has played 34 minutes together. And then Denver's 34-man unit without Michael Porter Jr. with Bruce Bowen has played 34 minutes together. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that they've had good health. They've had good health where a lot of teams haven't. They've had availability of their best players, which a lot of teams haven't. I go back to this, and we talk about matchups, Tommy. We talk about matchups. Hey, there's a chance they could get that Golden State in the second round. Golden State starters have only played 27 games together. That unit, 128 offensive rating, 106 defensive rating, 21.9 net. I'm checking the numbers today. I believe that's number 2 overall. It may be number 1 overall for 5-man units in terms of net rating, high usage 5-man units, but I know it's in the top 2. So that's a cause for concern, just parsing through data in terms of what is reflected in their record. They've had availability. They've had their best guys together a lot, more than any other team. But then you look and you're like, well, their best guys together. I mean, when you talk about 5-man units, like the best 5-man units, you're talking about plus 15, plus 20. Hey, that's the playoffs. If you have health, you're going to play those lineups together more. The rotation, you're still going to play an 8-9-man rotation, but the minutes together, those change. You might get a 4 or 5-minute run if you're a bench guy. You're going to try to play your best lineups together as much as possible. That gives me pause for concern. The one thing I'll say in the playoffs, last thing I want to say on this, and we'll move on. You need closers in the playoffs. You need guys who can create. De'Aaron Fox in the clutch this year has been fucking awesome.
Crazy.
He's been awesome. Most clutch time points, shooting 54.2% from the field. And in the clutch games that he plays, they're 20-12. So that is a positive. I'm not being negative or positive on this team.
Yeah.
I'm just saying these are some interesting things that I've found. I do think the offense translates. I think shooting translates. I think De'Aaron Fox translates to the playoffs. I think Sabonis, we've seen him this team is going to be tough to beat in the playoffs. But the concerns are the defense. The concerns are maybe their record is a little overinflated based on the fact that they've had their 5-man unit together so much relative to the rest of the league. That's just me being honest. It's not malpractice. It's me being honest.
So if you want to watch the rest of the episode, check out The Old Man of the Three Things, available exclusively on Amazon Music.